Okay, it's Soil to Statute with Terra Carver, our maiden voyage. Terra, thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you, Seth, for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Last time we spoke, we came up with this idea where you
Yeah.
could give us kind of a little bit of a report of what was happening on the farm and a little bit of a report of what was happening at the Capitol.
Yeah.
And weave that into one, thing. So
Yeah.
if I'm a farmer and it's that moment when winter meets spring,
Yeah.
what's happening as far as soil is concerned?
Okay. Oh, wow. Okay. Well, first, I love the concept that we've come up with soil to statute, because they're both seasonal in the context of farmers and the legislature. And I represent farmers and work in the legislature. So rad. I can handle this. I gotcha. Okay, so what's happening in the soil right now? And I don't think this is unique to cannabis. This is unique to any farmer who's in Northern California who's planting vegetables or tending to their vines or looking to bring in a cannabis crop this year. And the soil is waking up, essentially. Right now, the days are getting longer. The sun and the light spectrum are out for a longer period of time. The temperature is starting to rise. Unfortunately, I have to report that the state of California is dry for this time of year. So right now we have officially hit, we're a little bit concerned on how much precipitation we've had. Our rivers and our creeks are lower than we would like. Also on the cannabis front, our ponds are not as full as we would like right now. We're seasonal farmers that store water in the winter to use in the summer, and we would like to see the rain come up a bit more. But yeah, the soil's waking up right now. The farmers, I wouldn't say are waking up. I think they're getting back out into the soil for the first time in a couple months. So exciting times.
You and I spoke about the fact that a few months back they put in cover crops.
Yes.
Now I know what that is. Please share with the viewer, the listener, no matter how they're getting this information, what this is as far as Humboldt County is concerned.
Cool. First and foremost, hello listeners. Appreciate your participation and I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you about what's going on in Humboldt County. Right now, the cover crop is at its peak production and all is good in cover crop world. They've been planted kind of early fall and now they're late fall and they're coming in through like their maturity position or time of development and things are good. They have an impending death ahead of them. Cover crops do multiple things. 3 things they do is 1, they grow and they protect our soil from rain, actually from erosion. So they act as erosion control throughout their lifespan. 2, if there's specific types or varietals of cover crop, including legumes, they're actually taking nitrogen from the air and putting it into the soil. So they're essentially chopping down or redispersing critical plant food in layman terms. So that's happening right now. And then 3rd, the impending death and doom that they have is that they're going to be unceremoniously whacked apart and mowed into the soil as a deposit of nutrients for our upcoming year. So that, depending on what kind of cover crop there is, what the farmer's best management practices are, all of those 3 things are happening in different farms at different times right now. But it is peak cover crop season.
In Humboldt County, you mentioned to me that usually these cover crops, especially in the winter, are not food for humans,
No.
Whereas a rotational crop somewhere else could certainly be.
Absolutely.
So what are we farming? What are we putting in as a rotational crop? What is it?
Well, right now we have cover crops in, and then we'll be putting in cannabis. Some folks will rotate different plots of land with cannabis or food production, and food production broken out into what different types of production of food, or like what different crop are you putting in. Each crop comes with its unique requirements or desire or appetite for different types of nutrients. And so if you've got a crop that's really hungry for nitrogen, maybe you don't replant it there the next year, you plant it over here, and in turn you plant over here a crop that's really It takes a lot of phosphorus. And so knowing what plants or what crops or what food or what cannabis, the nutrient requirements will then dictate your following years of rotation. Also, I think an important piece to look into this is crop rotation is animal rotation as well. That's a very important part of regenerative farming, is not only just planting crops, but ensuring that you have some animals on that piece of land to do what they do to regenerate and reintroduce certain nutrients, and then also weed out certain weeds. You can get, apologies, my calendar's open. You can get, you have different animals that will specifically feed on noxious weeds, and I mean, that's just a benefit. So yeah, so animal and crop rotation.
Best of all worlds. And as you said, there's the impending death for these cover crops, but it's good news because they regenerate right into the soil and become, what's old becomes what's new again, right?
Yes, they're essentially the salad, the salad bar for the future crop planted there.
Fantastic. Yes. All right, so that's what's happening in the soil. What's happening in statute land? You know, you're picking up where you left off on this one. There's some legislation that has been introduced that you kind of love, right?
Well, two steps back. I'm a farmer by heart. I'm a policy wonk by necessity. And so my heart and my hands are typically with the soil. These days now, I spend more time in Sacramento talking about the soil or talking about the farmers. So to kind of pivot out of the really cool fun stuff, which is crop rotation and animal rotation and cannabis, and into the legislature, which is politics and policy, I'll crack that open. So, how do I start? California's got some work ahead of it. We've got some serious issues that we're facing right now. A number one issue right now is taxation. Prop 64, in my opinion, produced a tax regime that's fairly broken. It's not just, I guess, my opinion. We see this through broad stakeholders, including industry, labor, and the government themselves. It's a very difficult tax to understand. It's a very difficult tax to have oversight on. And so I think that, I know that there's broad support, and even from the governor's office, to streamline this effort so that we're not dealing with this clunky system that nobody's happy with. I won't go too deep into the details with it because it's that everybody likes to say the sausage making process. I'm transferring to a smoothie making process. Okay, I'm just going to start not use that anymore. I think we can all agree that a nice smoothie making process is probably a little more PC at this point for 2020. So within the smoothie making process, that's where tax reform is right now in the state of California. I'm happy to report that we're working with the legislature, the governor's office. Labor's been a key partner in this, and a couple other associations across the state who represent various supply chain or parts of the supply chain. So that's our number one issue. I expect to see streamline reform this year, and that should be coming out shortly. I'm very supportive of it.
You do, because that's a big comment. You do expect to see streamline reform of taxation in California.
I do. I think there's broad support in broad terms for streamlining, and I use the word streamlining, this process that was voted on by the voters, and much respect to the voters, but detailed tax policy may have not quite been really what they were voting for when they voted on Prop 64.
In terms of the voter, once we get something on the ballot, it becomes binary, right? So, yes, maybe I did read Prop 64, every, letter of it, but I don't necessarily have to agree with every single letter of it to vote yes, because it's a binary decision. My only other choice is no. Or not to vote, but no one doesn't vote, right? All right, so so that's taxation. What about the other stuff?
Cool. So the other stuff is more like, this is the blend of the soil and the farmers and policy coming together. And this is the development in the state of California for appellations of origin, which as representing small farmers who I love so much, they're amazing and their stories are so great. We've been looking for the past 5 years, not only just within Humboldt County, but other regions across the state, Mendocino, Nevada County, Big Sur, and on and on and on. We've been looking at ways that small farms will be able to compete in a commoditized market. no one's disagreeing that we're going to see large scale farms, not only in the state of California, but across the nation as this, and globally as legalization unfolds. And so how do small farms differentiate themselves? Well, one of the key factors we found, and it's one of a couple, is the development of appellations of origin. And when we started doing our research on this 5 years ago, with a lot of people putting a lot of time into diving deep into how the French did it with the appellations of origin, specifically looking at regions like Champagne, or appellations like Champagne versus the American model, which have some distinct differences. We were successful in early 2000, I think it was 2016, to get the state of California to agree to develop a program. So fast forward to now, the state has spent the last couple years doing public outreach. They have their own team who've been doing their own research. We did pretty extensive stakeholder involvement last year with Cannabis, which is a branch of CDFA, to develop this program. And I am happy to report last week, the proposed regulations dropped. And I mean, if you wanted to like have a moment in time where the heritage farmer regions of California all did a collective and there were some tears, it was when those proposed regs dropped, and it was a Friday night, so there were bottles of champagne being popped. So nonetheless, here we are, we have these regulations to look at, and so that's what we're doing right now, is diving into those.
So you'll dive into those, and maybe next time we'll kind of get our hands dirty, so to speak, with those. You just said that, you know, champagne bottles were popped. Also, Prosecco bottles were popped, and probably some cava. And that's the point.
Yes.
If I want champagne, I have to pay for champagne. I have to go get champagne. You know, all other sparkling wine cannot call themselves champagne. That's what we're talking about here, right?
Yes, absolutely. And to take it a step further, the current statute, soil and statute. Here we go. I'm gonna drive this one home. The current statute doesn't actually go further enough to exclusively have terroir farmers, so farmers who are growing in the natural soil with the light bulb in the sky, with no adulterant activities, meaning that they're not pulling tarp, they're not in greenhouses, or they're not in indoor buildings. Right now, the statute doesn't go that far. And so we are going to be working very closely with policymakers and hopefully be able to convince the state of California in Sacramento that we would require exclusively in-ground full sun appellations of origin, as we were very, very loud in the appellation working groups last summer. So that's kind of that's taxes and appellations. That's where we're at. It's an exciting ride. I'll just leave it at that. It's an exciting ride.
There we go. All right. So we will leave it there. Terra, thanks so much for doing this. Obviously, it's already good stuff, and I can't wait for the next time.
Thanks, everybody, for tuning in.